The views expressed in this video are solely those of the hosts, collaborators, and contributors, and do not necessarily represent the views of Royal Productions, OWC, LLC. We encourage diverse perspectives and open dialogue. If you have any concerns, please contact us at info@royalproductionsowc.com. Thank you for being a part of the RPOWC community. Some content may be offensive or disturbing for certain audience and viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey everyone, welcome to the California Avenue podcast. I'm your host, Unconventionally Black, UB for short, and this is a Black-centered space and place where all are welcome and where we discuss unconventional topics unapologetically from lived experiences and perspectives. So just a warning, today's topic may be a trigger for some. It is generally a difficult topic to have a conversation about. And I feel like a lot of people aren't quite sure how to navigate these conversations. So I'm hoping that through my lived experiences, that we can start to have more of an understanding of what kind of things may be helpful for individuals who experience today's topic, which is barely holding on. Barely holding on is my way of talking about suicide, and whether that's people who have experienced thoughts of suicide, who have had previous attempts of suicide, or who have lost a loved one from suicide. Honestly, this conversation is even hard for me, and I have this conversation quite frequently with other people, but talking about my own experiences is something I haven't actually done before with as far as this type of platform, but I would like to spread an awareness around this topic so people are again more comfortable to have these conversations and ask questions that may need to be asked, or look for the signs that may need to be looked for. Any of the things that is talked about in this episode, or have had a loved one who have passed from suicide and need some extra support, I encourage you to find a community that is empathetic and they're listening and is attentive. If you are not able to find that, please call 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and it is there for anyone who needs it, just to have someone to talk to and not have any judgment. It's open 24/7, 365 days a year, so please utilize it if you do need that support. There are people out there who would love to listen and hear your story. Alrighty, so to get into this topic, I decided to share my experiences with suicide. And like I've said in the beginning, suicide is a very complex topic. It's really difficult for people to have a conversation around it. And I think there's just a lot of fear in general about, well, if we have this talk, is this going to cause this person to want to do this even more? And it's quite the opposite. So I've learned through my experiences what things are needed. So I'm hoping to share that today. So my first experience with suicide was from a loved one who was at the time I was 9 years old, and they were doing things in their career that no one else in my family has ever done. Not a lot of African Americans have been doing this career, and he was going for it. He was gaining a lot of traction. He was becoming more and more well known, and we were all just so excited for him. He was this big, buff, strong, but yet soft black man, and yeah, he was just the kindest spirit. He had the kindest spirit, um, and he was a really kind person. And yeah, I was always happy to see him when he came to visit and when he was around. He was quite busy working, but it was always exciting to hear stories about him and to also, be around him and see him. So I want to say maybe when I was around 10 or 11 is unfortunately when things went downhill for him, and he passed. And the way that my family explained it in the moment was, that he passed away, that it was very sudden. And I remember we were doing walks for him because we thought that it wasn't justified how he passed. And a lot of family members had a hard time with the reality of what happened. And I did not learn until later on in life, maybe like when I was like 14, I would say, I found out that he passed from suicide. So I wasn't at that age, like clearly aware of what suicide meant, but I could tell from the way that my family was reacting that it was way different than any other grief I have seen. Unfortunately, I've had a good amount of family members who have passed, and the way that people were grieving was different. It was a lot of confusion and a lot of questions and a lot of denial. The stories that were told about what didn't happen or what really happened was very conflicting. But it was pretty clear as to what happened based off of the impact it left my family. And death is difficult in general and hard to cope with, but his passing, like I said, my family, you can just tell that it was extremely difficult, and extremely heartbreaking for them. And I could just, again, remember all of the confusion. So from that, it did leave a lasting impact on me, being that he was someone that I looked up to. I wasn't expecting to hear that he struggled, but of course, if you've seen any of my other episodes and you've seen my episode on parental wounds, unfortunately, my parents didn't really do a whole bunch of work to help me understand a lot of things in life. But when it came to mental health things, that wasn't their specialty. So unfortunately, I didn't get to fully grasp how much of a difficult thing it is to struggle with suicide. And yeah, I felt like that was an opportunity to have conversations, because within the second phase of my life, when I was around 16, I was in a relationship that my parents would have not been okay with. My family would have not been okay with, because I was in a relationship with someone who was the same sex. And I grew up really religious, and my family is from the South, so were really, really into traditions, and even unhealthy traditions. Um, and I just remember being so excited to be with someone, but also I was so scared. And this was my first relationship, and I had no fucking idea what I was doing. I didn't know who I could talk to, so I just kept it to myself. And I was in this relationship for 7 years. So it was 7 years of secrets and 7 years of struggle too, because the person I was with also grew up very religious and could not tell anyone. And I don't know, that fear just created a lot of confusion. And yeah, we weren't quite sure if it was okay. So a lot of the times when we were together, we would pray to be different, and essentially like try to pray the gay away. And I just remember feeling like a gut-wrenching feeling in my stomach, like not because of that I was with the person, but because I was disappointed when I couldn't stop myself from liking them, and I couldn't stop myself from being affectionate to them. I thought my faith wasn't strong enough, and it just created a lot of fear and anxiety. And I was scared that if anyone found out, that they would disown me and they wouldn't talk to me, that they would think that I'm disgusting. And, you know, a lot of that is, of course, our anxiety and our fears speaking to us. But also, some of that was steeped in reality. My family was very homophobic and made it known. So, and would heavily push for certain upbringings. Like, the expectation was to get married to a man and have children. And I was scared because I was not fitting that, and I wasn't quite sure what it meant for me, but I knew that I couldn't tell anyone. So we kept it between us for 7 fucking years. It was a long time. And that's when, unfortunately, I started to have thoughts of suicide. And again, it was from feeling as if no one would accept me or understand me, that I was bad, that I was gross, and yeah, I just kept all of that in, and it created a lot of self-hatred. And I remember going off to college and going through so much with this person, trying to remain connected, but also growing apart and not telling anyone about it just fucking sucked. I went through my first love and my first heartbreak and didn't have anyone to talk to. And yeah, it wasn't until I was in college and I started learning more about sexuality that I was like, okay, so this isn't completely abnormal. And I decided that because of what I was experiencing, that I wanted to try therapy. And that was the first time that I've ever told anyone about that relationship. And I was still fucking terrified to say it. But the therapist I was working with at the time already knew like some of my history with dating, and I would always frame it as my friend, my friend, my friend, and we had these issues and these issues, and I would never say that we were romantically involved because that is how I coped with it. We were just friends in my head, right? That's what I told everyone. That's how we stayed underneath the radar. That's also how we had sleepovers and all that great stuff that you can't do when you're younger. But yeah, that was just my friend. And then when I told my therapist, she was like, that makes sense. And I just immediately, I was like, wow, okay, this makes sense. All right. And it was just like something just clicked and I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. This past of mine isn't so horrible. Maybe I can try to tell people. And I remember telling my therapist, I want to tell my family. I want to tell my family, and trying to work up the courage in sessions to have the conversation, trying to get my mother in therapy to talk about majority of the issues that were happening in my life, and it just never came. They could never come. There was always something. So it just kept accumulating, this self-hatred and confusion and being scared. It just kept growing and getting bigger, and it took such a big piece of my life. And I just remember feeling so empty, not understanding where it was coming from. So yeah, working through therapy, I eventually did tell my brother. He was the first person I told, and he was, of course, amazing and supportive. And maybe a thought that crossed your guys' mind is, well, why didn't you just tell him? And it was because I was so scared that I couldn't tell anyone, that if anyone got any information that I was dating someone, and dating this person specifically, that they would be ripped out of my life. And I just wasn't willing to put that at risk. So I held it in, like I said. So eventually I told my brother. He was amazingly supportive, helped me tell my parents. My father was like, yeah, which was, such a relief. I just remember feeling so happy and like a high in a sense after I told my dad. Then I told my mom, and it was not good, and it didn't go well, and it ended up making me feel worse. And my brother definitely tried to comfort me, but from then on I was like, you know what, no, I gotta go back to old ways and just hide this big piece of me. So I stopped telling people again. And yeah, again, that self-hatred just kept growing, and unfortunately life does not stop. So a whole bunch of new stressors were coming into my life, and while I was in college I was also working. I was in school. I was trying to fix relationships, heal my trauma, and I was just spiraling and spiraling. And there's this one stressor that I'm not willing to talk about right now, but there was this one stressor that happened, in which I just remember feeling like an out-of-body experience. And it was like I was walking around and I was going places and doing things, but I was not there. And that was a real low for me. And I was scared, and I just felt these waves of emotions during that period, which was like isolating, not telling anyone truly how I felt, and getting really, really sad and crying and then going numb. And the numbness is what scared me, because I could not feel anything. I couldn't feel happiness. I couldn't feel joy. I couldn't feel sad. It was just like a zombie. Like I was just there. And that's when typically my thoughts would come in. And with my lowest point, I eventually told my therapist, how long I've been battling with suicidal thoughts. And I told her that I did have a plan, and I told her how far I got in my plan, and it ended up with me having an evaluation to see if they were going to 5150 me, which is an involuntary hold that typically psychiatrists, therapists can do when someone expresses that they're a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And I was studying psychology, so I was quite aware about hospitals, and I was just terrified and denied everything and didn't go. So yeah, but it didn't get better. It just got harder and more difficult to deal with. So that was a big chunk of my life. And then, I was progressing in life and feeling a little bit better, but it's always been in the back of my head. And then I would say this last and current phase is before I got diagnosed with my chronic illness. I was having a lot of flares and a lot of pain and things that I could not even start to understand what the switch was. I was very active in life. I mean, I would go to my friends' dance classes when I wasn't even registered for them, because that's how much I loved being active. And to have, to be in your late 20s and then have these flares where you can't walk because the pain is just so excruciating, it makes you feel miserable. And scared and confused again. And yeah, my symptoms just got increasingly worse, and the pain increased and started to be constant. And yeah, then I started having chronic pain, and I started having limitations where I wasn't able to walk on certain days. And having that amount of pain, and having it so consistently, it feels unbearable at times. It feels fucking miserable. I can't even begin to explain how hard it is to manage that. And to have doctors who think that you're just out here looking for drugs and and deny your symptoms and don't listen to you, and you have to advocate for yourself. You feel it's so fucking demeaning. It's so fucking demeaning, and it's so heartbreaking to go somewhere and want help, and for them to look at you and be like, yeah, you're making this up so you can get drugs. What? Like, I'm not asking for drugs, I'm asking for help, which is your fucking job. You would think that you would have more compassion, but no, that was my experience with the medical field, and it was a lot of up and down, and back and forth of something's wrong, and trying to get people to listen to you. It's just, again, it goes back to that original feeling I had, which was that I had to hide, that no one is going to be able to see me, and no one's going to want to be with me and help me. And yeah, so it's been quite the experience trying to manage chronic pain and a chronic illness. And once I got my diagnosis, I thought a whole bunch of relief was gonna come in. I thought there was going to be a lot more answers and a lot more solutions, but unfortunately, having a rare condition, an invisible illness, it's a lot more questions than answers, and it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of sacrifice. And when you're already so exhausted and so tired, the last thing you want to fucking do is sacrifice. So once I started to get more information on my condition and started to understand my limitations, the thoughts didn't necessarily go away. There's a period in my life where I was on disability, and this is why I want to slap people across the face when they try to say disability is like, oh, you're just trying to get disability. Like, disability ain't shit. It's barely enough money to fucking pay rent. That is like, whew. It's nothing to live off of. It's nothing extravagant. It's not a lot. And there's a lot of limitations with it. And even though I wasn't getting a lot of money through disability, I didn't qualify for food stamps. So I had to spend my money on food, on my housing, on everything that I own, with very little money, very little capacity, and a lot of anger and frustration because I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this, and now I have to deal with this and deal with it alone, in the sense that there isn't someone with me day to day helping me, which is sometimes needed for me. So being on disability and just now having a diagnosis, but not having good insurance where I can get good care and just kind of taking the crumbs, it led to a real low. And it was really hard to get out of. It was really hard to have any motivation to wake up and do something and try to do something different. It was difficult to tell people that that's what I was feeling, but if I didn't have the two things in my life, and of course there's other things in my life, but these two things are the things that are my protective factors. In a sense, these are the things that keep me going. If I didn't have them, I can't say with confidence that I would have tried to keep fighting. And luckily, I have a therapist now who is amazing and has been helping me manage all of the crazy shit that has happened in my life, but has helped me manage my suicide. Because again, once I became sick and I thought my emotional pain was a lot, once I started experiencing physical pain, I could not imagine that this life would be worth living, honestly. So working with my therapist, she has helped me a lot with identifying things that make me feel like it's worth trying. And, most important thing I've learned through my experiences is having a safe place. Having someone you can talk to makes all of the difference. We have to move away from this false narrative of if we talk about suicide, then it's going to encourage the person to do it. That is not the reality. It encourages the person to explore exactly what it is that is making them feel that way. Being that safe space is so important, and it's so crucial, and it really does make a difference if you can just sit there and listen empathetically. And even if you haven't had this experience and you haven't had loved ones who have passed away from suicide, it's important to just listen and ask, what can I do to help you feel supported? What things can help you feel distracted even from your feelings? Even if you're the person who just can get on the phone and talk to that person about your shit and be like, let me ask you how you're doing. Like, that helps a lot. Distractions are helpful. If you decide that, hey, I can't hold the intensity of this conversation, please be the person who will be willing to take that person out of their element and environment for a little bit. Go to the park with them, go outside with them, go eat with them, sit with them, ask them things that will make them feel seen. So having a safe space is really important. If you can't be that safe space, then I would hope that you can point that person in a direction where they are going to be able to talk about how they're feeling. One of my tips for suicide prevention, based off of my own personal experiences, is going to therapy, of course, and having and creating more insight as to what are the things that are going to keep me going, and what are my reasons to fight. And I've had challenges with finding reasons to fight that were internal. All of my reasons to fight have been external, and I think that is perfectly fine if you are trying to find reasons to fight. But from my own experience in life, those things can change all the time. Our external environment's not what we're in control of. It's our internal thoughts and our feelings. And I am working on finding those reasons and creating more space and grace for the days where I feel depleted and diminished, and understanding that I need to navigate and move through things in a more gentle way when I'm feeling that way, and moving in a way that is still within my capacity, that isn't going to drain me. Outside of my own personal experiences, I have had a lot of conversations around suicide, and common thing that happens, or common theme that I see for people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, past attempts, is feeling overwhelmed and feeling invisible and feeling like there are no other options and things won't get better. And that's hard. It's hard to feel that way. And the best thing that we can do as people who are willing to hold space for others who are experiencing this kind of pain is remind them of the beauty that they bring to this earth, and and remind them of how important they are to us and what they mean. If you're someone who is experiencing a chronic illness that causes chronic pain, or a chronic illness in general, something that has helped me significantly is to understand that our pain fluctuates. And when we get in those lows, we think that, things aren't improving, or maybe we think, well, I think, man, is this going to last forever? And just like anything in life, nothing is forever. Things come and go, they come in waves, just like any other emotion. So when we're at our lows, it's important to remember that there will be relief eventually. There will be a moment, even if it's just for an hour, where you're not even thinking about your pain. That is a win. So we have to be able to count those wins. The last thing I want to leave you guys is with warnings of what suicide ideation may look like. If someone is expressing that they are feeling hopeless, helpless, that they don't feel valued, that they don't feel seen, that they don't feel like they're going to overcome something, those are all indicators that maybe this person is thinking that they are better off not on this earth. If they have more general concern for other people's safety compared to their own, that also might be a big indicator amongst, the other symptoms and signs. That could look like someone saying, well, I don't care if I die, but if so-and-so died, that would be horrible. That would be the end of me. Another warning sign is if someone is giving away their possessions. That is a big, big, big sign that someone is thinking of ending their life. If they back out of things that they're really passionate about, if they isolate a whole bunch, if they lose their job, if they quit their job, these are all things that we want to be mindful of when having conversations with people. Even if you don't know them to that extent, I think it's still important to say, hey, are you okay? Has anyone asked you how you're doing today? Because you never know what kind of conversation is gonna change or save someone's life. It is truly a cruel and difficult world for a lot of people who experience these things. It's very challenging to pull yourself out of those places alone. And if you have the privilege of not having this experience, I want to welcome you to have more conversations and hold more space for individuals who look like they're just down and out and going through it. You never know what type of interaction can truly help someone. So there are a lot of resources online for anyone who is experiencing the things that were discussed on this episode. Please be gentle with yourself. Take care of yourself today. Do something that is going to make you feel warm, nourished, and loved. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, you guys, for joining us here on the California Avenue podcast. I'm your host, Unconventionally Black. We drop episodes every Friday at 1 p.m. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification to stay updated on all future episodes. Again, please be gentle and careful with yourself today. I'm sending you all the love and the support, and I'm hoping we continue these conversations, that we can continue to build a healthy and responsive community. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful night.